It's really good to be here. But before I start, just like to give you a bit of a sense about who I am and my story through design and kind of being an entrepreneur, starting my own business. So at heart, I really see myself more of an entrepreneur than a designer. I was founding product director at a digital mortgage broker called Burrow, which was a 0 to 1 startup, which was then later acquired. I've taken risks myself by starting my own business. And before Shopify, I was transforming products and design teams at New Day, which was is a credit card business. So very much in the regulated space of Fintech. I'm from Blackburn, which is the northwest of England. You may have noticed by my accent. If you want to know more about Blackburn, I really recommend watching The English Game. It's a really good series on Netflix, and it tells you a bit more about the history of the area. It's a super good series. And growing up, my father was really entrepreneurial, so it really left me feeling quite, left me with this feeling of being an entrepreneur, a bit of a fever, not really knowing what to do, a bit of anxiety, constant anxiety, and really trying to find my feet in the world, and that's kind of been part of my journey, really. And now at Shopify, I'm now on a mission really to help other entrepreneurs establish their businesses on Shopify, the platform. And a quick snapshot of me, I thought it'd be worth just kind of showing a bit more about my personality. I'm massively obsessed with eBay. I think that's my northern side that comes through. I love a bargain. I'm always coming up with new ideas. I think, again, that's that fever that I feel, constantly trying to, give myself, a feeling of fulfillment, to try to find a new startup or a new idea that I can start working on. I've got a very positive, proactive way of working when I work with my teams, and that's very much like an entrepreneurial spirit, and that's really kind of cuts across product and design, which is where I've found my skill sets lie across both those areas. I love a post-it note as well, so I work remotely. You will never see them, but they're all over my screen, constant reminders. And I've recently learned I've got a great forehand smash. I've just recently taken up tennis, so if you fancy a game, let's set up a game after the talk. But back to the topic, and really why I wanted to talk about this. It's a framework that I fell in love with, starting businesses, but also working at companies at scale. So building habits that create trust to try new things. And I wanted to reflect back on my time at Burrow, which was very much from the ground up, 0 to 1. And talk about that journey and how we found our feet and how we found kind of places to focus and make a start. And there was an overwhelming amount of information to go through, lots to unpack. It was a super regulated space, and it's really difficult to know where to start and where to focus all of our efforts, because we're under a lot of pressure. We tried to establish a new product. We had investment from VCs, and that first step out of the gate is one of the most important steps a startup needs to make. And it was really through only asking questions that we were able to really focus our efforts in the right spaces. And that led us down the path of running experiments and starting to map our work out to see where the traction was happening. This is when I fell in love with a framework called Lean Experiment Maps. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's my hope at the end of this talk that you feel really motivated to try mapping out yourself, take more ownership of the work and really get behind the work that you're doing and feel more comfortable with taking risks in organizations at scale as well. So a really good start to make is be incredibly visible with all of your product and design decisions that you're making. Help people follow along on the story or the journey that you're going on. Because nobody likes to play catch-up, right? People want to come on that journey with you and share things. So if you share all of the decisions that you're making, people feel like they're part of that journey, and you come together as a team. So use experiment maps as a way to focus your conversations around the business, and it will actually help you improve little by little. And so by being more transparent, it will help you build trust across your organization and also build momentum in your teams. And I thought it'd be really interesting to plot out the journey of Burrow Mortgages when we were actually establishing product market fit, and start to map out the successes and the failures that we kind of experienced through that journey, And you'll notice it's full of ups and downs, lots of mistakes, and it's great to have those mistakes and have a healthy reflection back on those. So the first kind of experiment that we ran was around mortgage options and actually helping customers make the right decision, because finding a mortgage is one of the biggest financial decisions we're ever going to make. So you become very nervous. You have to build up a lot of confidence around the option that you're going to choose, and it's got to be right for you, right? It's got to sit with your circumstances and your future plans. And so, through asking the questions to customers, we found that actually customers were paralyzed by choice on comparison websites. There was so much, it led to so much confusion. But then questions to brokers, we realized that brokers didn't feel comfortable sharing more than one option, and that's because they didn't want to lose the business, they wanted to close the business. And so what we found actually, transparency will really help narrow the kind of the customer choice, but also help build trust and long-term help them kind of obviously do business with Burrow. So we launched our first experiment, which was actually giving customers 3 options to really help aid that decision-making process. And it was our first step. Out the gate, it went really, really well. We felt really good about ourselves. We felt like we really had a really good momentum, and also we picked up quite a lot of traction through some press and obviously lots of inbound traffic as well. And through the initial conversations that you're having with customers, what we started to realize is that people wanted to know what they could afford. And it's very, very simple. Brokers will use a 4.5 multiple, but actually they want to know the true amount that they can actually afford. And that really led us to the kind of the second experiment, which was around mortgage affordability. And this was actually an experiment that we ran with the top 10 lenders on the market, and it was actually to really present the true amount that a customer could borrow from those lenders, and really demonstrate the difference in the amount that kind of varies between those top 10 lenders. So we then launched a mortgage calculator as a separate experiment, and this went incredibly well. We were overwhelmed with the amount of kind of inbound traffic that we were having. We actually struggled with the amount of inbound traffic and inbound calls that we were having, and that really made us realize that we needed to have some level of prioritization around eligibility, and we really need to focus on that eligibility up front to really narrow the pipeline that was coming through. Super exciting. We had lots and lots of traffic, so really, really good time to be establishing the product and finding that product market fit. That led to the third experiment, which was actually putting eligibility further forward and actually help us kind of narrow down on the quality of profiles that we were receiving through that. Obviously, it's a very successful launch of the calculator. And we then launched eligibility. It didn't go as well, but we were getting higher quality profiles, which was good, because that was the objective that we wanted to hit. And then actually, when we look back retrospectively at these 3 experiments, what we realized is that we're all working independently of each other, and we needed something that can help bring everything together. And that led to the 4th experiment, which was really, I guess, the ultimate product that we realized through the experimentation, which was called the mortgage report. And this mortgage report actually gave customers a score around the complexity of their deals, whether it's possible or not, but actually was a great way to be transparent and give customers the kind of build the customer trust that we needed to help them transact with us as a business. But then zooming out, I think it's really important to realize that actually that's just a very initial stage of starting a business, and I think also very much through maybe starting a new product or a new feature. And the destination is always going to be much further away, and that destination may move at any point. But what you're starting to see is that you're starting to build momentum. You're starting to build that traction towards the destination, and actually will start to build a level of sustained success over time as you can kind of continue to develop your experiments. So retrospectively, looking back, it's okay to be wrong. It's actually part of trying something new. You're not going to always get things right, so it's good to be kind of looking at this as not a negative for sure. Being wrong actually creates those learning opportunities that can help design perform better. And learning really helps to build a growth mindset and actually helps kind of push towards continuous learning, continuous improvement constantly. Over time, you're going to become more resilient, and that's what you should always try and strive for overall. So focus on that journey, the stage that you're currently at. It's really, really important, but also realize that there's going to be a destination into the future. And there's lots of frameworks that are out there with the Javelin boards. You can use methods like A/B testing to see whether something's working or not. You can also obviously measure your KPIs. You can measure KPIs for your new features or your new products. But back to the experiment framework that I'd like to go through, which is the Lean Experiment Maps, which helps you document your journey over time and tell the story of success to the people that you work with. So be visible and map your work and put your assumptions into actions. Measure the impact over time and actually start to document all of these things and make it visible to all of the people that you work with. And this is across disciplines, right? This isn't just focused in design. This is product design, engineering, data, and you all play a part. You're one team. You're not just one person. So I'd just like to kind of go through this framework in a bit more detail to help you kind of put this into action. And the first stage that you really should start to focus on is being incredibly objective. And always start with a really clear question that you're trying to answer. And a good example of that might be, what could we do just to increase signups? Right, super simple. And that will lead to, obviously, the acquisition funnel and things like that. And that's going to make people come up with a number of assumptions, and that's great, that you've started the process of design thinking. That's super important. The next stage is creating focus and making sure that as a team, you're focusing in the right space. And so frame your assumptions as hypotheses, right? And design experiments that are going to actually drive expected behaviors. And always be sure to run an experiment one at a time. Because if you start to create multiple experiments running them at the same time, you're never going to know what is affecting what, and you can't actually easily analyze the work that you're trying to do. And keep things low effort. And also try and strive for the work to be more, high impact and creating maximum impact overall. The next stage is committing, and actually as a team, getting behind the work. Simple as that. Make a soft commitment that you really truly believe your work is going to make this level of impact. And if we go back to the example of increasing the number of signups, commit to a percentage or an uplift of maybe, let's say, 5%, and get behind your work, and because that's really important, because it will help people see the kind of impact that you're trying to have overall. So have an achievable target and go aim for it. Once you've built the product and you've gone through engineering and you've released that work, don't forget to measure. I don't know how many times I've seen teams that I've worked with that really retrospectively forget about measuring. They have the anxiety of just getting something out, and they forget to measure. And actually, measuring is a super healthy part of learning, right? So you really need to be measuring the KPIs, or actually, if it's just about the signups, what does that uplift look like overall? So really come together, look at the actual results together as a team. There shouldn't be one person again. It should be just as a team across all the disciplines, as a group, making the kind of objective decisions around the results. Then come together and learn, and really ask that question, why? Why are we seeing either positive results or negative results? You should always look at the positives and the negatives, and don't just kind of focus on, let's say, things didn't go well, great, let's go back. Always focus on why are certain things happening, and actually then start to interpret why we might be seeing those results, because it may be something that you changed further down the line, or in a different product somewhere else. It could have been impacted from a different team. So you really need to know where you're trying to have that impact as well, and extract some insights, and actually talk about those insights as well. It's good to really reflect back the things that you've done to other people so they hear it and then they're part of that journey as well. And actually come together and agree. So deciding those next steps, if things didn't go as planned, you should, as a group, across products, again, engineering, design, data, You should all come together as a group, all sit in the same meeting. Don't lead with one person's assumptions. Always make sure you're starting from a fresh start and actually decide what that next step is going to be, because everyone's going to come to the table with a different perspective, and it's going to help you decide whether you're going to make further improvements or stop the experiment entirely and move on to the next thing that may be focused on a bigger objective. And let's talk a little bit about managing risk. Because the word experiment, it sounds risky, right? If you're working in a regulated environment, people are going to start thinking, what if the team get it wrong? Is the risk really worth taking? And this does depend on the types of organizations that you're in. Maybe some are more risk averse than others. But I think a very simple way to do it is just don't call it an experiment, right? Avoid those kind of negative connotations that come with that word experiment. And maybe describe it more as kind of mapping your improvements over time and tell the story of the impact that you're trying to have over that journey as well. But other ways to offset that risk is to frame the opportunity and look at the opportunity over the customer lifetime value. So it may be within organizations, they have a customer lifetime value of maybe 2 years or lifespan of 2 years. Start to frame that opportunity over that lifespan. So if you're trying to save, operational costs, think of it as, okay, if we make this amount of saving, what is it going to look like over a 2-year period? And actually start to put that kind of the percentage that you're trying to save into commercial pounds. And that's going to really actually help you message things very differently back to stakeholders, and it's going to actually bring more people on board with your work. And again, if you're looking at commercial growth and you're trying to increase sign-ups, again, what would that look like over those 2 years, and how can you start to have that impact overall? Other ways to look at reducing risk is to gradually roll out your work to a percentage of your users a bit at a time. And actually that's going to help you demonstrate even further impact as you start to gradually roll things out. And actually this is a technique that's really used to build confidence around your work, and actually confidence that the team is really focusing on the right things, and actually helps you pull back without actually kind of damaging the bottom line if it's too risky. So forming habits, and these kind of habits that you need to start to bring into your teams, they don't really happen overnight, and it really takes a disciplined approach to building habits, and it takes a lot of practice. So do practice a lot, and start putting in a regular cadence of meetings where you can really start to get together, talk openly about your work, and have an impact overall. So first kind of good habit to start forming is to form a hypothesis around your work and build these hypotheses off the team's assumptions, not just one person leading with their own assumption and kind of bulldozing through. It's really important to have that healthy, open conversation and really frame it around the things that you truly believe is going to make an impact. And a good way to start kind of framing your work is maybe start with if this then that statements, because it's going to help you really demonstrate what you're trying to achieve, but also maybe start to frame them around we believe if we do X improvement, we expect Y audience will do Z behavior. And that's just actually a really good descriptive way of helping people see overall what you're trying to achieve. Make a commitment. So like I mentioned, it's really important that you do get behind your work, and if you are looking to create an uplift in the acquisition funnel or through sign-ups, commit to a target that you actually expect to see overall. So that commitment really helps bring others closer to you and become more interested in the work. So do put a number on it and actually help people understand what that percentage means in pounds. Start to review your results together as a team. This is a super healthy thing to do. You've got to come together. It's going to actually start to change the team dynamic, and also it's going to actually provoke more interesting questions as you start to work more closely together. So take the time to review actual results together and go on that same journey without leading assumptions, and discuss why you might be seeing those results. So reach that shared level of understanding and actually then decide on what those next steps are going to be. And you may well be thinking, when is the right time to start experimenting within my organization? I thought it's probably worth just highlighting, maybe don't just experiment for the sake of it. You really need to make sure you've got a clear question that you're trying to answer, and it's also going to be really healthy for you to be able to have different conversations with different stakeholders. If there's no clear frustration that you're trying to improve on, just go back to the kind of the product objective that you're trying to achieve, or go back to the kind of focus that you're trying to overall achieve as well. If things are too high effort or too complex, really break them down and make them low effort, right? How can the team, if you've worked a bit closer, more closer together as a team, you can all try and find ways to make this a little bit more low effort and also keep things as simple as possible. So that's actually going to help your team move fast and actually have an impact quicker as well. So all of the small bets, they all add up. And I'd like you to kind of think about how can you maybe even be 1% better tomorrow, next week, or next month? How can you start to make things actionable in your teams? And how could you maybe start to make things more low effort? And that's going to help drive you towards continuous improvement more long term. So think about what could this really start to look like in your company, and really start to think about how you can apply this in your work. So it's not really just about tracking experiments and measuring KPIs. It really is about believing that trying something new is going to help everybody learn as a team, is going to help everybody be better together, and it's actually going to help you have a positive impact in the companies that you work at. So thank you very much. Hopefully that's enough time for everybody to be getting lunch.